Alright, making a video. Yeah, it's another Anaconda VOD video. So it just pissed some people off, but whatever. There's nothing else to argue with, and some of these points I guess are reasonable to make. I mean, here we are on planet Earth. Alright, there's a truth underlying it all. Okay, sort of pointing that out on the draft science. I did some good draft science videos, so you should go to that channel. Link. Yeah. Um, Yeah, I think I got it all. Unified theory, yeah, I got it all done already. Anyway, but yeah, there's one reality here. We're all living on this surface of this planet, and there's a history, and there's a truth to our existence. And all these people just want to just be able to live all their little Jedi stories, all their little narratives. And they accuse me of having a tautology or something. And no, I think you're all the ones living in the fantasy world where, you see some destiny. Anyway, it's not just about being pessimistic versus optimistic. It's just about being willing to defend what you're saying. I mean, if you're going to say something, you say, oh, there's a reasonable chance that it's true that we're made by God or some other thing. You'd think you'd have some kind of defense for that beyond, I believe it. You think you'd feel an obligation to do better than that. I mean, you're going to, if you're going to say yes or no to like nuclear power plants, you'd think you'd have some sort of understanding of how they work, how complex they are, whether they can be made fail-safe or not, whether these are even possibilities before you raise your hand and say, well, another Fukushima wouldn't be that bad. We can take it. Yeah. You'd think you'd have some kind of argument. You'd be willing to make your argument in defense. Somebody's accusing you of being silly and stupid. You'd think you'd be able to say, no, I'm not silly and stupid. This is why I'm not silly and stupid. And I think that's all. I mean, that should be the minimum standard. That we get into this arena of argumentation and we say certain arguments are just silly and stupid. You can't make that kind of stupid argument. Logic is inconvenient, so error. we can't listen. We can't deal with the truth because, gee, the truth says we're idiots, and we can't be idiots. That's not logical. You can be an idiot, and if you are an idiot, you probably should do something about it, right? Right. Well, anyway, let's just play this ludicrous mush.
We seem to have discovered one of the paradoxes at the heart of logic. And logic doesn't really do well with paradoxes, with things like the laws of non-contradiction, etc.
There's some problem with the laws of non-contradiction. There's some paradoxes that wouldn't... I mean, I'm just saying that intrinsically something called a paradox is a problem. And that's identifiable. You put that in the category paradox, put it in the category problem to be solved. It likely has a solution. I mean, there probably are no true paradoxes. Paradoxes are a problem. That's evidence that you have an error in your philosophy somewhere, in your perception. If it creates a paradox, gee, you got to do something about that. It's broken.
The paradox at the heart of logic is that logic is a system of correlating information. It's a system of correlating particular artifacts.
Whatever. No, again, so right from the beginning, right? He's not going to defend this definition of logic. He just states it glibly. Says, this is what I say logic is. And as I've stated, logic is in the actual construction of the things. Things exist in a logical context. 2 plus 2 doesn't equal 4 because we say so. Okay, there's a relationship between adding something that has two-ness to something that has two-ness, and then it ends up creating something with four-ness. This is just a fact. It's a fact of the circumstance. It's not a fact of our perception. So again, he's just trying to make logic into something that we're constructing rather than something we're revealing. Big difference. You reveal the truth. You don't make it up, buddy.
Of reasoning.
Sorry about the volume. I'll crank it up another notch. I have it as loud as it'll go. And it doesn't seem to be sufficient to the purpose.
It's useful up to a point. But the problem is, of course, logic cannot really be applied to that which is not logical.
Oh, so this is more mush, right? So if we got into this, like this honor arena where you're going to have some sort of sensible, rational conversation, somebody can get away with saying silly things like that. Logic doesn't apply to things that are illogical. It doesn't apply to things we want to be true that aren't. I mean, come on. There's, it's just so bogus. We're allowed to have illogical things. That's like saying we're allowed to have unreal things. Silly.
What's not logical? Us. Or perhaps I shouldn't say we are not logical. I would just say that we're not always logical.
Okay, there we go. So we're not always logical, and that should just be acceptable. So we should, allow as much illogicalness into philosophy as we want. We shouldn't have some perception that maybe when we're doing philosophy is when we should use the most logic, and when you're doing, fun in the bedroom, that should be where you're the least logical, or something like that, right? That you have places where you do logic and places where you don't have to. And like when you're doing the nuclear power plant analysis thing, yeah, that's when you sort of apply logic. And you say, well, let's logically figure out whether this is at all economically sensible or rational or in the human interest. Yeah, let's figure that out.
And that our non-logical part is probably at least as big of a part of our makeup as the logical part.
Well, again, this is just kind of also silly, right? I mean, all he's basically saying is that your desires are as big a part of your life as your ability to multiply and divide. Well, of course, you can know geometry and trigonometry and whatever, calculus, and you can know all kinds of different things, and you can still be a human being that likes to have some macaroni and cheese for dinner or something. Okay, so yeah, there's no conflict between the fact that you're an animal and that you have to feed the animal. So, a computer can have really good programs on it, and some of the programs can be absolute crap. Okay, they all don't have to be, doing something constructive. And it definitely has to be maintained as a computer. It has to, the hardware has to keep being maintained if it's going to be a computer at all. And we can understand that about ourselves, that we have to entertain ourselves, that we have to keep ourselves somehow viscerally in the game, keep the monkey alive so it can actually do this thinking thing. But I mean, again, a false duality, a false conflict of interest. There is no conflict except the one you create, because you don't like it when logic points out you're an asshole, and you don't want to admit that. And that's all this comes down to.
And it's not going to become logical. There's no evidence that is even possible.
Right, you're not going to logically desire sex or logically eat or logically do any of that. That's true, because it doesn't have something to do with some sort of rational imperative. It has something to do with a visceral, physical imperative. It's evolution, yeah, but that doesn't mean it's free from analysis. That doesn't mean that you're free to say anything goes. So if I want to rape, it's okay. Or if you still have an obligation to recognize that you have to still function. You still have to have that illogic within a bubble of reasonable permutation, reasonable expression.
So we either cope with the fact that we are not consistently logical, and that
we're not consistently logical. Again, we can be consistently logical when we're talking about whether or not there should be a nuclear power plant built tomorrow, whether or not they're going to spend enough money to do it right, or whether they're going to do it on the cheap and create all kinds of risk. We can evaluate and do that logically, and we can separate it from any kind of personal interest besides the personal interest in not being irradiated to death.
It's not going to happen for us to be consistently logical. We either cope with that, or we just...
Okay, so he just keeps saying it. So he makes this declaration. People can't be consistently logical. They can't go into an argument and make arguments that are sensible and rational and well evidenced. No, they have to, by some law of the universe, go into the argument with silly mush like, I love it, though. I want to. I want to really, really bad. Yeah, you know, I mean, that's all he's doing is denying intelligence. He's saying intelligence is your enemy because intelligence is going to point out that you can't have everything you want. It's going to deny you. It's going to restrict you. It's going to confine you. It's going to take all the fucking sadistic pleasure out of your fucking sadistic fucking psychology. Because we really do want to hurt each other, and we really do want to just take, and we really do want to be king, and we really do want to whap everybody with clubs and drag the women off by their hair, because we're all just cavemen and we can't be anything else. It's just such an insult to you fuckers, and you're too stupid to hear the insult. I mean, that's the idiocracy of it all. We are an idiocracy. The intellectuals are too the intellectuals are sucking at the Google tit, and and eating their apple crumb pie, and they're just as duped and consumed, as the idiots. And it's just a sad and tragic, pathetic circumstance. It is. There is no, what's the word he used before? The dilemma. Well, I can't think of the word he used, but yeah, I mean that's not the problem. The problem is
Submit
us.
ourselves to the paradox at the heart of logic.
So the paradox at the heart of logic. So it's logic that has the paradox. No, it's not the paradox that we are liars. Yeah, no, that's not the creator of the paradox. It's the fact that you're all just a bunch of compulsive liars who want to live in deluded land, right? No, that's not the paradox. No, it's logic that has a problem. Now, logic works just fine. You fuckers are broken. Let me say that again. Logic works just fine. You fuckers are broken.
It reminds me of that old Star Trek episode, The Changeling.
Ah, yes, Star Trek. Let's go back to the Bible. Oh, I mean, Star Trek. Let's get real, right? I mean, light speed travel. Come on. But anyway, yeah, okay, Star Trek is fun. It's got lots of interesting little questions it brings up, but it always does bring them up in kind of silly ways. So I'll point out the silliness of this one.
When a utterly logical machine decided that humans needed to be exterminated simply because...
Simply because? yeah, right. Exterminate is right there. You'd say, well, that isn't really logical, right? I mean, you could just sterilize them, right? So sterilize would be a better concept. You could just cut their nuts off if that's all. You're saying it's an infection. You don't have to kill them. You can just cut their nuts off. So right there's a flaw in the logic of the superintelligence, isn't there? Yes, there is.
They did not make sense to it. Because
no, they did not make sense, period. Not to it. Okay? It just posed the question, what good are you fuckers? Can you defend yourself? And yeah, and Kirk and Spock looked at each other and said, well, I don't know. I can't answer that question. I guess we're no good at all, really. I mean, we are really silly. That's right. Here we are zooming around in space, and what are we doing? We're having a soap opera every week. Every fucking week as we travel through space, what are we doing? Oh, I got anal warts this week, and oh, I fell in love this week, and oh, blah, blah, blah. All fucking soap opera. Just a big, long fucking soap opera. So you get light speed, and what do? You just run some more soap opera. So yeah, that's pretty fucked up.
all that machine, the changeling, understood was logic. Humans were illogical, humans must be removed.
Yeah, well, whatever. Like I said, this must be removed thing would have to have some argument, so I think the argument was probably more complex. I don't remember this exact. I don't know if this is the computer the guy made to do the war thing, and then it decided that humans aren't worth the trouble because all they do is have wars anyway. I don't know what computer this one was, but it doesn't really matter. All the computers were the same. They all had the same crazy voice. Yeah, you know, like they had all this advanced technology, and yet they couldn't make the computer sound like a person. I mean, come on. Let me think. I am a retarded computer. Computer has to think like a retard because I am a retarded computer. I mean, it was really just so. You know, when the screen came on, the big sound. Like somehow they couldn't they couldn't make pixels on a screen without a. I mean, that was pretty lame technology. Even the doors. I mean, come on. They're traveling light speed and they can't make a silent door.
If we want to treat logic like some sort of master,
Master Blaster? Yeah, again, so he's saying, again, if you want to think that doing these intelligent thing, like dissecting life, dissecting your own life, personally, and just human life, and maybe the life of the American people, or whoever your nationality is, or your people, or your kind, or this thing, or what's the fucking problem with really analyzing that and saying, I'm going to try to get the most out of it. I'm going to try to do it the best I can. Oh, how fucking insane to do that logical thing of saying, well, gee, if I analyze this circumstance and actually understand the circumstance, then I might be able to pour the coffee into the cup without spilling it all over the counter. I mean, isn't preventing waste, like, in just so fundamentally ABC of logic? Don't unnecessarily create waste? Gee, that's so hard to figure out? Ah, we have run out of volume. Okay, that might be the problem with the volume. My speaker needs to be plugged in to recharge it. So, my bad. We'll go back a step. See if it's a lot louder. It might be a lot louder now. Yeah, hopefully.
master,
No, not really.
then we may as well admit that we've created a monster, a Frankenstein, that will turn on us.
Right, so Frankenstein isn't the insidious biological reckless organism, right? The reckless organism who, hey, I think she has herpes, but God, I'm so horny. Okay, so that thing is something to be admired. Okay, the thing that just says, I'm drunk, let's have sex with anything. You know, I don't have to call the horse tomorrow. You know, whatever, right? That thing is something to be admired, and this insidious monster of the logic that's going to say something like, you're not doing good enough. Oh, fuck that. I mean, you fuckers are, you know, rewarding this guy for just talking anti-intellectualism. This isn't as dumb as religion. This is dumber than religion. This is dumber than believing in God, believing that your penis is smarter than your fucking brain. This guy is fucking crack shit insane. And you should just label it properly. And then let me be done with this nonsense instead of fucking rewarding this insane bullshit. I mean, let's see what the ratings are. Well, 4-3. I guess people are starting to catch on. Yeah.
Because logically, we cannot make a case for our own existence.
Okay, well that should tell you something then, shouldn't it? Logically, we can't make a case for our own existence. Well, shit. Then that should make you think about whether you should be voting for it, doesn't it? Isn't that the logic of it? If you can't make a case for nuclear power, you can't logically point out how the risk is so minimus that there's no way it could financially blow up in our face or blow up in some, even not even just financially, but in some other catastrophic way. I mean, obviously you can't afford Fukushimas, right? If you add in Fukushima, you could have like 1,000 perfectly functional nuclear power plants for 40 years, and one Fukushima just ruins the efficiency of all those 1,000 plants. They might as well have been burning coal. They might as well have been coal plants, because now you've created so much pollution and crap into the environment. You've created such an environmental catastrophe and such an expense that you not only got inefficient fuel, you got it at a huge environmental price. So what did you gain? Oh, that's right, you lost. And not losing is important here. Not losing is important. Not losing is important.
Now, if you want to submit yourself to logic in that way, the process ought to be completely voluntary.
I mean, what sense does that make, right? Let's have voluntary choice regarding nuclear power. You can't really do that. You can't separate your life from other people and the impact on other people. So this is again such a bogus argument that somehow I have the right to impose, and you don't have a right to stop me from imposing. You can't impose to stop me from imposing. That's his logic. Obviously, it's not logic. It's obvious nonsense. Nonsense, 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 nonsense.
And I'm all for that. If you can't handle your own irrationality, and you are irrational, and so am I.
Again, irrational in what context? Irrational in my sexual preferences? Irrational in my food taste? Yes, I concede. Irrational in my recognition that 2 plus 2 equals 4? Or irrational in my recognition that Fukushima isn't a good idea? And that if you're going to have Fukushima, then nuclear power isn't a good idea? That there's something irrational in that recognition?
So is the rest of the universe, actually,
If you ask him, the rest of the universe is irrational. Well, the rest of the universe doesn't have a brain. It can't see the relationships. It can't see the risk, right? It can't do any of this calculating of good versus bad. It can't understand waste. We can. So again, comparing us to the universe that doesn't have a brain, isn't that like the ultimate straw man? Look, I'm not doing any worse than the universe is doing in the contest. The universe doesn't have a brain. All right, you have a fucking brain, and you're saying all I have to do is be as dumb as the universe, and I've done all I'm required to do. I mean, you know, it's like a kangaroo saying it's jumped all it needs to jump, you know, because it hopped as far as a grasshopper. I mean, it's a non-contest. The kangaroo should have higher expectations.
ask me. If you can't handle that, well, then I suggest then that you just do what logic dictates.
Yeah, well, I'm going to do what logic dictates, and I'm going to fight people like you, okay, Frankenstein. I'm going to show up someday, probably. Someday there'll be the opportunity. The torches will be lit. We'll all have our pitchforks. And that's what it'll come to, okay? Because you think you have a right to tell us, I'm going to make nuclear power plants whether you like it or not. You don't care about a democracy. You don't care about a vote. You don't care about having to defend your choice. You're just going to say, I'm an imposer. I will be an imposer. You will not stop me. Well, fuck you, asshole. All right, I'm going to be in the argument. I'm going to show up for the debate. He's basically saying to people who are opposed to nuclear power, go kill yourself. And then you won't know that we built nuclear power plants. I mean, it's just this pussy shit argument. You know, why don't you do the right thing, fucker? You've recognized yourself as just an irrational blob of shit, so why don't you do the rational thing? You know, jump in the fucking tub with your toaster, you fucking creep.
There are those of us, however, who are quite okay with that part of our nature.
Yeah, and that's just fine if you left it to your own fucking... If you were chopping your own fucking wiener to pieces, I'd say go ahead, Looney Tune. You want to poke your own eyes out because you think you're doing something constructive? Well, go for it, shithead. You want to rip your own teeth out with a pair of pliers? Go for it, fuckbrain. Alright, but it's when you're doing it to other sentient creatures that you have no... These are not your rights. They are not your property, you fucking cunt.
Which is not logical. That can wrap our heads around paradoxes and can leap beyond things like...
leap beyond the fact that... Well, I'll call it a paradox, okay? The fact that... I won't just call it a problem to be solved, that nuclear power plants can... melt down. No, I won't call that a problem to be solved. I'll just call it a paradox and say it's impossible to solve, and then I'll ignore it. That's what this idiot is, this fucking lunatic is preaching. Alright? Call all the problems intractable paradoxes, right? Like AIDS or something. Oh, we can never fix that. We'll never cure that. We can't do anything with that. And then just accept. So whatever the problem is, call it a paradox, put it in the unchangeable category, and then just say, let's just leap right over that. Let's just eat it. As long as it's not in my backyard, right? As long as it's not going to happen to fucking me, it's O-fucking-K. Boy, you people suck.
Laws of non-contradiction. Sorry, nobody asked me whether or not I voted for such a law.
Nobody asked me if I voted for the law against what, rape? You're going to put that in the list too? Right? I mean, he's saying, look, I can be a violator of ethics. I can violate somebody else's rights to be left alone, so to speak, because I didn't agree to any social contract. I didn't agree to any logical binding. I don't have to be logical. I can be an insidious monster if I want to be. And it's up to you to squish me before I do something. And he's just, that's all he's basically screaming, is kill me before I kill you. Hurt me before I hurt you.
I'll go for it as long as it serves my own needs. If things like the law of non-contradiction...
Yeah, I'll go for it means I will harm animals. I will torture them. I will subject other people to risk. I will impose my will, my ambition on the welfare of other beings for my own self-gratification. And they will eat the disaster I will create, and they will like it. Or else I will kill them. Or else I'll tell them they'll kill themselves. So why don't you, Antaconta Cuntavad, why don't you go to Japan and tell all the victims of Fukushima, you know, all the people that lost their ancestral properties and all that kind of stuff, and they're sitting there going boo-hoo. Why don't you go over there and tell all of those people, just kill yourself. You lost. We got to do what we wanted to do. We made Fukushima. We made Fukushima, and just too bad that it fucked you over. Because we just don't give a rat's ass about you. You don't mean anything because we want something and we're going to take it. So why don't you just say that? Go kill yourself because we want and we will take. And we just don't give a fuck about victims. Victims are irrelevant to us, the takers. You are such an evil fucking piece of crap.
Turn upon me? Well, then the law of non-contradiction is going to have to give way.
Yeah, give way to what? Your desire. I have ambitions and I will not be stopped. That's all you're saying. You're saying fuck having a rational argument about whether you have a right to take. You're just going to take. You just don't care to even defend your taking. You're going to say, I already know I'm going to lose the argument, so don't force me to have a logical argument about the rightness and wrongness of it because I claim a right to be irrational. I claim a right. That's just absolute nonsense. If you're going to be imposing on something else, you have no right to be illogical in doing it.
Don't want it to give way? That's fine by you, or fine by me as well. But if you just...
All right, I'll see you on the old whatever, the Russian front. I'll see you on whatever it is, D-Day or whatever we can call it. We'll give it some kind of day. Let's kill Canada Day or whatever the fuck it's going to be. Yeah, we ought to go with that whole thing. Maybe it's time to invade Canada.
Decide that it is going to rule you. Just let it rule yourself. The minute you decide that it's going to rule the human race, well, you get lovely things like old totalitarianism.
Yeah, and you get like crazy fuckers who have no money having babies, and you get like welfare whores and crack addicts and all kinds of other maniacal, disgusting gutter trash that just kind of destroys the value of life for many people. They just run them over in the street, so to speak. Yeah, that's what you get. You get a bunch of selfish, motherfucking, irrational cunt bastards. Yeah, causing waste, causing harm, for no good reason but besides, I admit it's irrational, I have a right to be irrational, I wanted to have sex, I had herpes, I didn't give a shit about telling anybody, so I gave them herpes. That's all he's saying, I have a right to give you herpes.
We are creating a square hole, and we are round pegs.
Oh, whatever that. You know, doesn't that just make so absolutely no sense as a metaphor? Okay, reality is a certain shape. You can shape your philosophy to conform to the evidence or not. And if you don't, then eventually, yeah, it's going to be shaved off. You know, the conformity is going to be imposed by process. Okay, so the failure, our failure to communicate, douchebag, this failure to communicate will be decisively unsurvivable for your silly, stupid spawn. Okay, you've decided to have a kid in a world that's on the brink of disaster, and it's just so bleak, and yet you did it anyway because you're just a selfish, irrational asshole. And you think that, oh yes, selfish, irrational assholes with, you know, laser guns and, you know, you know, understanding of atomic theory, that's no problem. You don't have to be rational and logical to split atoms. You know, go ahead, let the irrational control it. So you've already doomed yourselves, you silly fucks. You're just gonna add to the. You're just throwing. We already know it's a blender. We can see the blood and tissue and tissue and brain matter. We can see the shit in the blender, and you're just, because of your own stupid, ignorant denial, you're just gonna throw more stuff into the blender to get chewed up for no purpose, because the blender's gonna blow up anyway.
Remember, that square hole is what we have created.
Yeah, right. We created the idea that rapey is bad. Yeah, we created that idea. It's not intrinsic in the act of taking. No, that's not bad. Taking is good. Stealing is good. We've made the idea bad. Yeah, I mean, come on.
Frankenstein's monster turned on him, but it didn't have to. He should have created it as something that would serve him.
Oh, man, does that even make sense? I think that was his plan. Okay. You know, but he put the Abby normal brain in, and everything went all fucking sideways, didn't it? But the point is, he had no right to be creating monsters. He didn't get their consent. Alright, he went to the graveyard and pulled them out of the ground without getting their fucking consent. So he had no consent to be playing with any of that shit. And without consent, yeah, you gotta get it right. And it was the townspeople that turned on Frankenstein in the biggest way.
Logic.
Frankenstein, doctor.
Frankenstein.
Oh, so logic is the monster just rummaging through, randomly throwing little girls in ponds and such. Yeah, logic is killing us. It's not the illogic of not putting proper batteries in your nuclear power plant. No. No, it was the logic of I don't know, the stainless steel floors. That's what ruined it. Yeah, that was where the failure was.
If you don't keep it on a properly short leash.
Yeah, keep reason on a properly short leash, and give all the leash you want to your impulse to rape and pillage and take. So when you feel like doing something that's reckless and stupid, like, you know, she's unconscious, I have herpes, she ain't gonna know I fucked her. Yeah, don't let reason or responsibility enter into your judgment. Just be a son of a fucking bitch. Bravo, fuckhead. Yeah, what a disgusting monster. This is Frankenstein, right? These are the monsters. These half-intellectuals. You know, they got a little bit of knowledge as a dangerous thing. Oh, so fucking true in this case. Just awful. Just this, like I said, this is worse than religion. Irrational intellectuals, yeah, that's worse than religion. Shit. I don't even know what, you know, logic rolls a dice who seems mostly logical, but yeah, he has these, there's times when the wheels fall off and you're saying, what the fuck is he talking about? I agree with you to an extent. Well, what exactly? What part did you agree with here? What? But I don't think you understand the laws of thought. Well, I don't think there's laws of thought, so that's kind of even that's a scary phrase. The laws of thought. I don't know. People are nuts and insane and crazy, and I'm stuck on a planet full of fucking lunatics. Delusional, silly, stupid lunatics. I was thinking the other day, that yeah, I gotta be like, I gotta get me a rat army or something. I really have to figure out how to communicate with animals, and just like do the animal farm thing, but on the world scale, like just have a whole takeover. Yeah, something like that. It was an irrational fantasy, but it did cheer me up a little. It's not like I was trying to sell it as a real philosophy, anything like that. Hey, I heard a sound. How could it make a sound when the video's over? Clump, clump. Maybe some animals are showing up. Maybe I've psychically communicated with them. They're probably all going to be mice and rats and shit. I'll get used to it. Alright, anyway, till next time.